archetypal mystic or guru is the Buddha. And this little boy Siddhartha was born, and the father was very happy to have an heir to his throne, but these sages came to bless the baby, and they were in awe of this child, and they informed the king that his son was going to grow up to be a great spiritual figure. And so the king wasn't very happy with this, because he wanted his son to follow in his footsteps and be a great king. And so he said, okay, thank you very much. But he then kept his son very sheltered and protected within the palace, and never exposed him to anything of that nature, of the spiritual life and the problems and sufferings. He just gave him everything he ever wanted and needed. So he had all the pleasures and treasures and lots of games and entertainments and all of that. But Siddhartha was a curious young man. He wanted to know what's going on out there. He couldn't be boxed in within these walls. And so one day he got out of the palace, and he went out there, and he discovered suffering. He discovered sickness and old age and death, and it was a shock to his system, because all along, all his life, he had been sheltered from these things, and so now he was just like overwhelmed with this human suffering and the poverty that he saw and all of that, and he just couldn't reconcile it with his sheltered, cloistered life in the palace. But the last thing he saw before returning to the palace was this sage, this mystic, and this man didn't seem too disturbed and perturbed, and there was a kind of equanimity in him. And so Siddhartha was so attracted to this, and he wanted to know what it is that this man knows. And so one night, in the middle of the night, while everyone is asleep, and he had a young wife, beautiful young wife, and he had a baby boy, but he was filled with the suffering of his people, and he needed to get out, and so he snuck out of the palace, and he rode to the edge of town, and he cut off his beautiful long locks, and he exchanged his princely robes for that of a beggar, and he went off into the wild, into the forest, and left everything behind. And in the forest, he met these ascetics, these holy men who, and at the time it was thought that if you want to be a renunciate, if you want to follow this path, you have to be an ascetic. So you have to deny yourself. They would just eat some few berries and drink a little bit of water, and that was their diet, and so he, just like these fellow ascetics, he became emaciated and weak, and they wouldn't wash, and so they were filthy and in contemplation, but hungry and emaciated and weak, and this went on for years, until he had this epiphany. One day he was sitting in contemplation, and he hears there's a boat going past, and this music teacher is giving instruction to his student sitting in the boat, and he says, if you tension your string too much, it will snap, but if you don't tension it enough, you won't be able to play. And so Siddhartha has this realization. Siddhartha has this epiphany that he lived a life of pleasures and treasures as a prince in the palace, and now he had swung to the other extreme of denying himself all pleasures and treasures and food, and so he had gone to the other extreme. But truth and equanimity, insight, is not to be found in either extreme, but in the middle way, in the middle path. And so Siddhartha got up, and he started eating, and he started washing, and recovering his health and his strength and his clarity of mind. And his fellow ascetics looked at him in disgust, like, now you have forsaken our path, you are too weak, please, you must go now, leave. And Siddhartha tried to explain, but guys, listen to what I've just realized. And he's trying to explain to them about balance and the importance of balance. Like it's this earth-shattering insight, but they refused to listen. And so he went away, and eventually he came to this beautiful Bodhi tree, a huge tree, and he decided he's not getting up until he achieves enlightenment. And so Siddhartha sat there day after day in silent contemplation. And like what happens next, it's kind of mythologized, to help us understand it. But it's said that the demon Mara came to him to tempt him. So, and the greatest of temptations is sexuality, lust. And so Siddhartha, it's said that he was a very good-looking, he was a handsome guy, and he was young, and he was confident and charismatic, and it was very easy for him to go out there and meet girls and have relationships and to chase after sexual pleasure. But he chose something better, something higher, that's more meaningful than these fleeting pleasures. So in the story, it's he had to resist this demon, this externalized form of lust and sexuality. But there were other forms of temptations. It's not only sexuality. All our instinctual drives and all our primal emotions need to be regulated, and it can only be done through real contact and interpersonal interactions, relationships with people. You can't sit in silence on your own in solitude and hope to regulate your urges and impulses and emotions. So there's a lot more to it than the mythology implies. But it's a guiding statement or vision of what Siddhartha was going through in this process. And eventually he, having overcome these temptations and demons, he is awakened. What does it mean? What is enlightenment? What does it mean to be the awakened one, the Buddha? So like when we go to sleep, then much of it is just blank. It's just complete unconsciousness. There's no memory or anything. But part of it is this dream state where things are happening and we are going through these experiences, and it's all very real. It may be very strange. Like last night I had this dream. Yeah, that's weird. And I was in this place, and then there was like water, and there were these claws, and I wanted to get a better look, and so I jumped and I tiptoed on the water, and I was floating. And then I'm floating around this strange building with these creatures that didn't have heads, and they were like I don't know, anyways. But it was all very real until you wake up and then you realize, oh, it was just a dream. But the strangest things in that dream state you can accept it as real, and but when you wake up you realize, oh, yeah. So how can our real waking life be a dream that we need to wake up from? The Buddha's epiphany, his realization, was that he had to first fine-tune his instrument before he could make beautiful music. There's something wrong with all the voices in my head. Some of them are good and some of them are bad. Some of them are glad and some of them are sad. Some of them are sane and some of them are mad. There's something wrong with all the voices in my head. he had to practice.